Hello, and welcome to the Inflectra webinar on Test Automation and Robotic Process Automation of Microsoft Dynamics AX. My name is Adam Sandman, and I'll be the presenter today along with my colleague, Denis Marketsev. In today's webinar, we're going to be talking about using Rapise to do robotic process automation as well as test automation. So first of all, what is robotic process automation? Well, RPA, as it is known, is a technique for automating a set of applications by simulating what a user is doing, simulating user input and output. This is a way of then automating a business process by simulating what a user is doing, as opposed to more traditional system integration where you use programmers to interface the software directly. So, now we know what RPA is. What can RPA do for you? Well, it has many business purposes. For example, it can perform repetitive tasks, such as loading in data that you may have in a different form into your application. Instead of hiring clerical staff to do that manually, you can have a system do it round the clock in an automatic fashion. This saves time for employees and cuts down on costs for you as a business owner. Secondly, it can work autonomously round the clock, potentially in different locations at the same time, saving you money. It can also integrate legacy systems, particularly those that don't have an easy form of integration in any other way. For example, an application that doesn't have any APIs or web services may be hard to integrate, but using RPA, you can simulate a user actions using the user interface that's already available to integrate it with another system. And then lastly, you can use RPA to perform analytic tasks with large volumes of data that would take a user many, many years to do if it was done manually. Some of the benefits of RPA in general are you can use it cheaply. You don't need to have skilled programmers to create integration or automate tasks. You can use relatively simple set of automation scripts that could be created by someone who knows the application but isn't necessarily very technical. Similarly, it's easy to support. You don't have to worry about maintaining interfaces, maintaining integrations. If the application changes, you can just re-record the part of the script that changed. You can also use RPA to do things both on a local single computer or on machines across the world in different time zones in different locations. Another benefit of RPA is that you don't have to build a separate security system. RPA is essentially simulating what a user is doing, so therefore it only has the permissions that a user would actually have for real. Lastly, it does use your existing IT systems. It's just ultimately a simulated user performing actions against your existing systems, so you don't need to build complex integration middleware, workflow automation systems, or have its changes made to your IT infrastructure. It leverages everything you have already, but just makes things faster and easier. So now we know what RPA is, we're going to talk a little bit about Rapise, our automation tool. We're going to talk about a test scenario we put together today that shows you how Rapise can implement RPA in your organization. And the focus today is on Dynamics AX, but we'll talk a bit more about Rapise in general so you can see the breadth of its functionality. We'll then talk about some of the skills you would need if you're going to put together a team to do this. And then lastly, we have information on our integrated offering, which is both tools and services. So first of all, Rapise will be the tool we're using today to do RPA. And what are its capabilities? Well, Rapise is a powerful automation tool that can automate desktop, mobile, and web applications. It doesn't rely on specific screen sizes, resolutions, or coordinates. It interacts with the application directly, and so if you move a window around or resize it, everything you've recorded will still work exactly the same. It can make web service calls. So even though we say that RPA gets rid of the need to do system integration using web services, you may have a situation where the legacy system is integrating with another system that does have web services. So you can mix and match RPA integration with traditional system integration through an API. It can also read data from a database, which is useful if you have either test data or you have data that you need to load into your system from a database. It can also read emails, which is useful if you have data coming in from an email system. It will be able to read file and command lines, and it can also manipulate text. So if you do have a situation where perhaps the data you're loading in and automating may be in a different form, perhaps you get first name and last name as two separate fields, but in the system you need to load the data into, it needs to go in as full name, you have tools to do that manipulation. It has full support for Excel spreadsheets. In fact, it uses Excel to store both its test script and test data. So if you have analysts working in Excel, it's going to be very comfortable for them. Also, a lot of systems can export data in Excel formats. So it's a great intermediate format where you have to do integration between two systems, and the one common factor is Excel. And then lastly, Rapise does have flexible reporting and integrated orchestration capabilities, but we'll talk more about that later, so don't worry. Rapise does support many platforms, as I mentioned. Here are some examples. Today we're going to be focusing on Dynamics AX, which is in fact a desktop application run on Windows, and it also has some specific functionality. So we have support in Rapise for web, desktop, mobile, cross-platform technologies, various flavors of Dynamics, and various flavors of other tools such as Salesforce CRM, Office 365. So Rapise is a great tool for automating different kinds of application across your enterprise. Specifically for web applications, Rapise supports most browsers you'll encounter, various versions of IE, Edge, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, and even Opera. So you can automate tasks that may require different browsers. For example, you may have a legacy payroll application that requires IE6. You may have a newer application that only works in modern browsers. You can load data in from one and read it from the other. Desktop applications are a key strength for Rapise as well as web, and today we'll be using that in fact in our demonstrated scenario, which will be Dynamics AX, which is a desktop application for ERP from Microsoft. Mobile apps are increasingly important, and from RPA you may find that you have a data collection app that's a mobile platform. You need to get data out of that platform and load the data into something else. Or you may be reading data from a mobile app that you need to then load into a system. So we do have full support for reading and writing data to and from mobile apps, both native and web, iOS and Android. Physical and simulated devices are supported, of course. As I mentioned, although RPA is focused on the user interface, we do support testing and integrating with web services and APIs. So if you can get data from an API, you can use our built-in libraries for both SOAP and REST to do that for you. Of course, having an integrated process is good, but inevitably you may be running processes at multiple timescales across the world on different machines, and as a manager you want to be able to see what's happening, when it's happening, and what the progress is. So Spira Team is our orchestration engine. It integrates with Rapise, and it provides a global platform for scheduling and orchestration of tasks and scripts and bots. Now, in today's scenario, what are we going to be focusing on? Well, what we're going to be focusing on today is filling in a form based on some data in an external file, in which case, spreadsheet. Now, that data could also come from an email. For example, you may have an event registration system like Eventbrite that sends you emails when you sign up for things. You need to load that data in automatically. You could either read the email that's coming in, or you could open up, for example, Eventbrite, download the spreadsheet, and read the data from there. So there's different options for reading and writing data. We can also do web scraping and screen scraping for desktop and web apps. Rapise also does have terminal automation. So if you have some old mainframe applications using things such as AS400, VT100, we do have the ability to integrate with those as well and read and write data to and from a mainframe terminal. So that's some of the scope of the demo. The demo specifically will be focused, as I said, on Dynamics AX, which is an ERP system from Microsoft. Here's what some of the screens will look like. We do have a live demo from my colleague Dennis. This is just a test the waters to show you. And if you look here, we'll notice we're loading in some data from a spreadsheet that's inside Rapise in an Excel format. We're going to be opening up the Dynamics AX integration interface, and then we'll be using the UI to load the data in, but we will be doing some validations. So if a record already exists, we have code in there to handle that. We're also going to get some information from AX that we retrieve at the same time as adding the person and putting that data back into our spreadsheet. And with that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Dennis, who will do the live demonstration. Over to you, Dennis.
All right, so let's proceed. Here we have Rapise opened, and I'm going to create a new test in Rapise. And since the beginning, I can put my test inside Spira Team, so it is available for remote scheduling and execution. So I'm going to create a new test case, create customer, and link to this test case. I choose desktop application methodology in Rapise, visual representation of the script, and then Rapise is a record and play tool, so you can record your actions and have your script generated automatically by Rapise. You can later edit your script if needed, and then you can execute it locally or on other machines without any changes. Okay, so I press record button and Rapise starts recording my actions. So I'm going to create a new customer in the system. So I click on customers, click on all customers, and you can see that Rapise captures controls at a high level. It understands that I click on a tree. What's important is that Rapise does not use screen coordinates. So regardless of your monitor and screen resolution, recorded script will work, because Rapise bounds to controls and not some coordinates on screen. So I click on new customer button. I'm going to set the name for the customer. Let it be Google. Alright, so I already created these customers, so I need to confirm something. Then I need to specify a customer group. Let it be software, and save and close and do refresh, and all my actions are captured. And let's delete the customer we just created to put the system into initial state. So I click on Google. So it worth mentioning that when you click on the grid, Rapise has very sophisticated support for grids. Rapise recognizes it as a complex object. My click is a click on the cell, and the click data is click in the column with name and on the value Google. So the same will continue to work even if the set of columns will change or the value will be on some other row in this table. So this is very convenient. All right, so let's delete the customer we just created and go to our initial page. All right, so I can finish my recording, and Rapise generates the script. The script is in visual form and it's pretty easy to understand. So for each statement we have an object to act on, we have an action to perform, and if it needs some parameters, that parameters are specified in the same line as well. What's interesting is that for specifying parameters you don't need to know anything about programming, about quotes, escaping some symbols. So as you want data to be inserted into application, in this format you enter the data here. Okay, so we have a simple script, and let's execute it to see how it works. So it's pretty fast with interacting with the application. It can be much faster than human user, which may save time for entering data into Dynamics IX. So execution was just completed, and after the execution we have a very nice report which shows every statement and its status. If anything goes wrong, then we immediately see it in red in report. So we have a recorded script, but in many cases if you want to have an automation scenario or RPA robot, you need to provide some data. So you want to make your test data driven. So let's do this. So it's pretty simple. I just need to insert a couple of rows here in the beginning and provide my data here. First I'm going to specify the data right here on the same spreadsheet, so to parameterize it. So I'm going to create a map. It will be a map with name data, and it will contain just one column, customer name, and let's put the value here. Let it be Microsoft. All right, and what I need to do next, I need to use my map here in my script. So everywhere I used some hard-coded data, I will use my map that I just created, data, and specify the column from which to get the data. So I change it everywhere. I enter it the name of the customer. So let's go here and specify customer name. Okay, and the last place where we delete the customer. Okay, so it looks like I parameterized successfully, and I'm going to execute. And this time the script should create Microsoft. Of course, just parameterization is not enough, and as the next steps, we are going to create a spreadsheet that will have the data that we want to input into the system. So for this purpose, I go to Files and I create a spreadsheet. Here I will provide the same name for the column, customer data, and here let's provide a few customers. For example, Dell, Inflectra. So now we have here 2 rows, and in our script what we can do, we can bind to this Excel spreadsheet. So I'm creating a map with type range, and it binds to data XLSX file now, and I will provide the same name for this map, so I don't need to change my script, and I can just execute my script. To run all the lines from the spreadsheet, I'm going to wrap my steps into the loop. So where I want to do this, from the pressing new button and until deleting the customer. So I'm going to where it is, wrap selection. It should be at the bottom. Wrap selection into loop statement, and the loop statement will be with this map we just created, data. So now I have a loop that iterates through the spreadsheet and performs steps for each line in this spreadsheet. So let's execute it. So now the script should create 2 lines of data here. Okay, something happened. Unable to, probably I gave the wrong name, or I give it the name customer data, but it should be customer name. So if anything goes wrong, Rapise shows error in the report, so it's pretty descriptive. Okay, so let's move dynamics to initial state and run the script again. Goes to customers. Okay, now it works fine. And Rapise creates 2 records in the database. Okay, what if you want to orchestrate that and schedule and execute on some other host in our environment? So we created our test and it is linked to Spire test case. So after doing modifications, I need to save the latest version of my test to Spire test. So I click OK here. and all the files uploaded to Spira team. So I can close Rapise at this point, go to Spira test. Here we have the test case we just created. And now to schedule execution, I need to create a new test set that can execute several test cases at once. Let's name it customers. In the test set, I add my test case. So here on the overview tab, I need to add a test case we just created. And I need to specify where I want to execute this test set. So I need to choose the host. This is the host I'm currently displaying to you. And I want to execute it actually immediately. I want to execute it right now. So I set some date in the past. Okay, and on every host that is connected to Spira, we have a special component running. It's named Rapise Launcher, and on regular basis it sends queries to Spira test. And if there is any task to execute, Rapise Launcher will download the files from Spira test and execute, and then upload the reports back. So if we do not want to wait, we can do force polling here. Okay, and now Rapise Launcher starts execution. So it downloaded the files to a temporary folder. It now executes, and then we'll upload a report to Spira test. So we are pretty close to ending of this demo scenario. So let's go to Spira, and here on the test runs we can see the report of executing our test. So it contains all the lines here. All right, so let's minimize that and proceed to more complex scenarios that we already have implemented. So I want to open Rapise, and we have a more complex sample that can create a purchase order in Dynamics AX. So let me open it. It's also implemented in RVL. So it can start a new purchase order, fulfill order lines, then confirm, receive, and invoice the purchase order. So let's execute it. So the purchase order orders a couple of books from a well-known author. So now it adds some lines here. Okay, so what happened? Okay, it failed to click a cell, and I'm going to rerun this test one more time. All right, so works. Selects the item, proceeds and enters quantity, then enters unit price. The second line, the price for it, and now it will start to process the purchase order. Confirmed, received, and now the invoice. All this automatically and pretty fast, and posts the purchase order. So the process was completed. And the last scenario that I want to show, this is most sophisticated one. This is the one that grabs the data from external spreadsheet. Here is the spreadsheet. It contains the list of books written by different authors. And by reading this spreadsheet, Rapise creates authors as vendors in the system, and it creates books as released products, and it creates category hierarchy for genres of books. And also when a new record is created, then its ID is outputted to this spreadsheet. So Rapise can read and write Excel spreadsheets. So I am going to put the system into the state that this script assumes. So I need to close a couple of modules here. Product information management and accounts payable as well. So now the system is ready and I'm starting the test. So it can open the module and then navigate. So first it checks if there is a category hierarchy called genre, and that it contains specific categories. If there is no specific category, then it must be created. Okay, so the next step is to create a vendor in the system. So some of them are already in the system. So Rapise enters value into filter, then checks that grid contains the value. If there is no specific vendor, then Rapise creates it. Okay, so all vendors are now in the system. And Rapise proceeds to creation of released products. So it checks if the product does not exist, then it creates one and links to a vendor and to category hierarchy. Okay, so we are not going to wait until this process is completed, so I'm going to interrupt it at some point. I'm just trying to. Okay, so it finished. All right, let's continue to the presentation.
Thanks, Dennis, for that great demonstration. And now we're going to talk about some of the skills you would need to implement robotic process automation in your organization. So the first thing to mention is you don't need programmers. For most of the scenarios, at least. You can use the Rapise visual language to put together a set of actions and objects that are being used in the application. You can drag data from a spreadsheet or other data source directly into your script without any coding. Now, if you want to do some more advanced scenarios, if you do have one programmer available on your team, that is great. You can do some more advanced things using JavaScript. You can use the web service integration. You can perform some calculations. You can do more advanced logic, perhaps depending on the data that you get in. You want to load this data versus that data. You can make more advanced scenarios. And the good thing is you can have your JavaScript programmer do that work, and then everyone else on the team, they can use the visual language to call those functions, so that way you don't have to have a whole team of programmers. You could have just one programmer and maybe 7 or 8 scripters doing the work together. That reduces the cost and the skill level of doing RPA implementations. The visual language, as we mentioned, is easier to use and easier to maintain than code. It's object-based, it follows an Excel structure, which is very similar to most analysts, which will be using Excel anyway. For a lot of the times when you're putting together a scenario, it's often an Excel sheet. So RVL is a very similar concept for them. It's very flexible. It can be used just for very simple flows where you start a set of actions in a sequence. It can also do maps and loops and branches, as Dennis showed you, to do more advanced things without ever resorting to code. And so what are we offering? Well, we first of all offer Rapise, which is our RPA and test automation tool. We also offer training services, so you can get your team up and running quickly using Rapise, either with on-site or remote training services that we offer. We can do it by the hour or by the day. We have teams in different places available to do this for you. And then lastly, some companies will not want to do the RPA themselves. They have a business problem they want to solve and they want to have someone do it for them. We actually have RPA implementation services available through our partner. So that way, if you just want to get the tasks done, I want to load data from my event management system into my ERP system, into my CRM system, we have teams available to do the work for you. So we can either offer you just the tool and training, or we can take on the entire business process for you. And so just to recap, Rapise has automation capabilities for various different platforms: Dynamics, which was the focus today, general web applications, databases, MS Office, email systems, data files, web services, and mainframe terminals. It can handle all of these different technologies in the same script or different scripts depending on the business problem. So, if you like what you saw today, if you're an end user, please feel free to sign up for a trial. However, if you are a reseller of Dynamics solutions or a partner of Microsoft Dynamics, please feel free to sign up to our partner program. We do have special programs available for both resellers, so that means someone who would resell Rapise together with either services or Dynamics. Or you could become a sales affiliate. Perhaps you do implementation services for Microsoft Dynamics. We can become an affiliate. You can become an affiliate of us, and that way, every time you refer people to Rapise and to Inflectra, you get a commission. Regardless of the two, if you sign up for a reseller or an affiliate, we do have special discounted licenses available for you as a partner. And then lastly, if you do become a partner and you signed up for some of our discount licenses, we are actually offering some free training for a limited time. So become a partner, either a reseller or an affiliate, get your discounted licenses, and then sign up for your free training.